You are listening to the Primitive Intelligence Podcast, episode 515. Oh, let's call it Flattened Out. Gonna talk about, I don't want to call it a documentary. I'm gonna talk about a video I watched yesterday. I wanted to keep it simple and a little fun this week after like 2 months of heavy research. And I watched this last night and it's something. You know what I'm talking about.
I know what you're talking about. I didn't watch the whole video, but I've seen and heard concepts that were discussed, and it's fun. It's very entertaining.
It's entertaining. This also ties into episode 402, I believe, I did last year on Flat Earth, or last season on Flat Earth. So we're going to talk about that. It'll just be kind of an off-the-cuff kind of episode. No research was done. I have no notes. So it'll be good. So we'll just jump right into it. Episode 515 of the Primitive Intelligence Podcast starts
now.
So trying to keep it light and simple. I had a couple ideas of what I wanted to talk about. And I was just kind of looking at little things here and there throughout the week. And then last night, it popped up in my YouTube feed as I was working. And it's the video, I guess, mockumentary. Is that, maybe they're trying to be serious?
I think they're trying to be serious.
They think it's a documentary, but it's called Level With Me. And it's about Flat Earth. And it is one of the most ridiculous things I think I've ever seen.
I've followed every once in a while. Like, again, it pops up in my feed, or I hear people talking about it, and like the whole flat Earth thing has been evolving to a certain point to where I guess you call it devolving. I don't know, but it got to a point where. I heard some of these topics and I'm like, it's gone beyond flat Earth.
Yeah. Look, I'm all for people thinking outside the box and doing their own research and questioning, what you're told and what you're taught. Because I think that's healthy. It's good to look at different points of view, and some of it is fun, and some of it you can see the point they're getting at with some people, but there's especially this group in this video. Now there's a few other channels I watch sporadically that they aren't flat earthers, but they're like actual scientists and teachers and very intelligent people who pull these videos from a lot of the guys that are in this video, this Level With Me, and they just destroy their entire argument. And there's even a couple of them will issue challenges, and they've put real money, like $10,000 in escrow with challenges to, like, here's what you can do to prove flat Earth. If you can prove flat Earth, the money's yours. And no one has ever claimed this money. But they do the same thing. These flat earthers will do the same thing. They'll be like, oh, we'll put up $10,000 if you can prove the Earth is round. And then like 20 people will be like, well, here's proof. And like, oh, that's all CGI. But the disturbing thing about this video is the very first thing they start with is the Challenger disaster back in 86, all right? And that's the space shuttle that launched in like 70 some odd seconds into the liftoff. It exploded, killing everyone on board. They're trying to claim that the astronauts didn't die. They weren't even on the shuttle. And that they were given, well, not even false identities. Like, they found people who have the same or similar names and might even look a little bit similar. And they're like, the one guy's like a retired teacher, and they go to his house And they're like, you're Scobie, right? You're the astronaut from the Challenger. And he's like, no. He goes, look, I admit, like, we have, like, the astronaut's middle name was Richard. This guy's first name is Richard. So they're like, oh, he's the same guy. But this guy's like no, like, I'm not. It's, yeah, I admit we look vaguely similar. He's like, but that's not me. I'm a teacher. Right. And then they go after this McAuliffe, who's a teacher, like a university professor, and she just ignores him and walks away. And they're like, look, that's proof that they're hiding something. I'm like, or it's proof that they're tired of dealing with idiots like you. Like, they don't want to be involved. And here's the thing,
like, all those people that died, it was tragic, and you need to pay them respect. I mean, they gave their lives, and to say that, oh no, it's all fake and they're not living other lives, that's a pretty bold statement.
Yeah.
And it does, and some of what because I've heard them talk about this. And they have things like, oh, well, this guy had a company, and look at his logo.
Yeah.
And it's just, it's how far do you want to reach?
Well, and then it doesn't make sense, because it was like the company was called Cows and Trees, and it had a cow on a rocket, and it like flew across the screen, and it did like a loop-de-loop, and it went away. And you're like, it looks just like the explosion on the Challenger, and they overlay it over the explosion, and it looks nothing like it.
Right.
It looks nothing like it. But you're like, look, that's proof. But it's so... They say the reason for this is that the government was trying to do away with manned spaceflight. So they create this disaster that traumatizes the nation, and then they could move away from manned spaceflight. But it didn't. We didn't. We didn't move away from manned spaceflight. We got the space station still there.
Right. People are just looking. They'll just grasp at straws. Like, if they want to see something, they'll find it. It doesn't matter at all. You know what if it has any basis in reality. When I was in high school, like right around high school, right around college, like right there in my town, there must have been some kid that looked just like me, and we had to be like the similar age, because I would bump into people and they'd be like, "Hey," whatever his name was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "No, it's not me."
Well, that used to happen to me
for a couple of years, and like people just read into it. Like today, back then, it would be like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
Yeah. Well, do you remember there was somebody who his name was Buddy Jackson? I know what his name was, and apparently we looked identical. And people would be like, "Hey, Buddy," and I'm like, "No, not Buddy."
I forgot about that.
Yeah, and it happens so many times. I'm like, I don't know who this dude is, but we look identical. So there's a Buddy Jackson out there. Hi. Apparently, we look alike.
Well, that's the thing. Like back then, in today's weird world where people see something in everything, like it's just bizarre how you could go to see a commercial and believe, oh, like they're hiding it in plain sight. Well, it's like, no, it's just a commercial. It's just a commercial.
The other astronauts that they tried to claim were the same. The one, they couldn't find anybody who matched, so like, oh, he must have died. But then the other guy had a twin brother, and they're like, no, it's not really his twin, it's him. And the other guy's brother, because they had the same vocal mannerisms, they claim it's the same guy. They're both, I think they're Japanese. And English wasn't their first language. So as will happen, and I do it, I know a lot of people do it when you're talking and you throw in the, right? So these guys were talking, trying to articulate what they're saying, and they're putting these pauses and these ums, and they're like, oh, look, they do the same thing. It must be the same person. It's like, no, hey, they're related, so they're going to talk similar. And if English isn't your first language, and you're trying to get your point across, there's going to be times where your brain is catching up to what your native language is saying, and you're trying to translate it.
My brother and I, we're not twins. We're years apart. But at one time, probably not now, but at one time we sounded, when we were young, we sounded more similar to a point where, like, I would call my parents, I'd call my mom, and she would be thinking it was me, or vice versa. You know what I mean?
I don't know if you can hear that.
No,
Her radio's whistling so loud right now.
no, I can't hear it. Hang on, let me.
So I apologize
No.
if you can hear that on the podcast.
No, I can't hear it at all, so it's good.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, that was the first thing that they went into. And it was just so, like, they're harassing these poor people. And it's like, what are you doing? First of all, what does that have to do with flat Earth? So they lead that into rocket launches and how rocket launches don't actually happen. And the reason why they launch from the coast is because all the rockets do is they go up, they arc, and then they land in the ocean because you can see them arc. Now, I lived in Florida for 6.5 years. I got to witness the last 9 or 10 shuttle launches and several other rocket launches, living a half a block from the ocean. So I could just walk out of my house, walk over, and watch the launch. I can tell you that they don't land in the ocean. They take off and they orbit because they're going a certain speed. You know how long they're going to take, right? Not only that, but when there was some that were like right at sunset, so it would be maybe just after sunset, so it would be dark on the beach. And as the shuttle would take off, it would get to a certain height, and all of a sudden it would get really bright because it's above the horizon line, and the sun would hit it, right? Because the Earth is curved. And then it would, especially on those launches, I would stay on the beach, and you could wait about an hour and a half or so, and then you'd see you'd see it come over again because it has gone around. And they're like, well, that's just their explanation. I love this. Their explanation for the International Space Station is it's underwater because they train underwater, which they do.
Well, naturally,
yeah. They have
naturally the space station is then underwater, and it's not training. They're actually there.
That's what they're saying. They're saying that they CGI the water out. But they're always calling it a replica. They're like, they've got a replica of the ISS underwater. Well, if it's fake and it's underwater, that's not a replica. That would be the actual space station, right?
No, they're training to go to the real one.
But no, they're claiming that the real one doesn't exist. But they're always calling the one that they use as their fake space station as a replica. They're like, oh, they got a replica underwater. But if that's the one you're claiming that is the space station, it's not a replica. But so some people have thrown out to them, well, then why can I, with high power binoculars or telescope, when the space station flies over, I can see it, or people can get pictures of it. Like you can see the structure of the space station. So their explanation for this, and apparently have some government informant that told them that this is true. They've got, I think they said B-52s. I think they got like 5 or 6 of them that have
like duct tape, taped on them.
Taped onto them. And they show like a computer generated like what it would look like. And it's like a space station attached to the bottom of a plane. The plane wouldn't be able to fly with that on. It would never get off the ground. It's like, oh my, like what, whatever they can do. Like if that was the case, then you should be able to, if you can see the structure of the space station, you should be able to see the plane that's carrying it. You know?
And I, like,
it should be pretty easy.
I really don't want to make fun of people, right? But sometimes people, there's a thing called analysis paralysis, where you think about something too long and then you just keep thinking about it and you never come to a resolution. It's like, you know, oh, they're watching something take off and it arcs. It's like, well, you need to have a certain amount of inertia to keep it going, and you're looking to get to a certain spot. So you're not going to go straight up and then make like a 90-degree turn to get to where you want to go.
Exactly.
And
that is the actual reason why because they actually curve against the rotation of the Earth, or with the rotation of the Earth. So what you need a certain amount of fuel to launch into space, but you also need a certain speed to maintain orbit. So, like you said, if you just launched straight up, you can't turn once you're up there. So you would come up and you'd come straight back down. So they go up through the thickest level layers of the atmosphere, which are the lowest layers of the atmosphere. And as they clear those and they can turn, they can get more forward velocity, get the speed they need, and then continue to climb. Now, like, I think is it Virgin Galactic, or it's not SpaceX, it's Virgin, or one of the other ones has they call it like Mothership 1, I think.
I don't know.
And it's this giant plane. And then this spaceship is this little tiny like old, like 50s like experimental jet looking thing that they attach underneath it, and they take this big plane up and they get it so high where it's out of those thicker layers of the atmosphere, and then they drop the little one out and then it launches that way. It's the same concept. It's just not using the rocket to launch the whole thing. The funniest part though is you've probably seen video of it. I've seen it in person from watching launches, but as you get higher in the atmosphere, there's less atmosphere. It's colder. You've got hot rocket exhaust coming out. It crystallizes, it freezes, and then it starts to dissipate. And it dissipates oddly compared to what we would think because it's at a higher altitude. And then you're catching light from the rocket itself and from the sun or whatever you're seeing, and it gets this really weird looking, like sometimes it almost looks like a spiral, sometimes it looks like it's undulating. They're claiming that is because the rocket has gone up and hit the firmament, and the firmament is like hard water, whatever the hell that's supposed to be, and then it just skims along it until it's out of view and it crashes into the ocean.
The idea of flat Earth and the firmament, and nothing against people who are religious and they believe the Bible, but you have to have that religious belief, in my opinion, if you're going to believe in the idea of this flat Earth with the firmament. Because otherwise, if you don't have that religious belief, then who built the Earth? If you're not going to believe in a natural forming celestial body, and you think that this is artificially created, then what's the angle? Like, what do you like? What you know what I mean? Like, it's a very odd thing to think about. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. But if you believe in the Bible and you believe in God, you believe everything that's in the Bible, I could get it. You have faith. That's one thing. But if you're not, you're just Joe Schmo who doesn't have a religious belief, but they believe the Earth was created by somebody and it's flat and there's nothing underneath it and it goes out forever and there's ice balls. Well, who built all that?
Yeah.
Like, what is it then? Like, you know what I mean? Like, what else is there?
Well, nothing apparently. Well, there is, but not anything that we can get to because we're being held back by the government.
Right.
My question is, why would there be a firmament? A, and B, what holds it in place? And C, and most importantly, there are Vatican scientists, right? Now, I'm not Catholic. I'm not a big fan of religion as an organization, but they do have their own scientists, and they don't say anything about a firmament. A lot of what they talk about is that, yeah, what we know is space and the Earth is round. And I think one of the quotes they actually said years ago was, believing in God and believing in space and other possible civilizations don't conflict with each other, because as far as they know, we've looked everywhere we can see for a creator, and the creator must be outside our universe, which would mean outside of space, right? And I'm okay with that, right? That's easier to believe than a firmament over the planet or over the flat Earth. And it's, to me, it really, the people, and again, I don't want to disparage anybody, but if you're looking at it from this point of view, that we're safe from all this space stuff that could happen to us because of this firmament and we're under this dome, it's a very easy way to not have to think about some of the very bad things that could happen to us without us ever even knowing they happen. It's a safe place to be. It's the conspiracy theory equivalent of a serenity room. I'm under this, I'm protected by this more powerful being, right, and I'm safe. So everything is okay. And everything's not okay. I hate to tell you, but everything's not okay. We've had so many close calls with asteroids and space rocks. Something just hit Jupiter. Like last week, I saw an article about it, and they had no idea it was. Yeah, but they usually know when these things are coming. They just happened to catch it on one of the telescopes, and they're like, "Whoa, where did that come from?"
See, and again, I'm being overly logical, and I don't want to offend people, but the way I see things, let's just say higher being, whatever higher being you believe in, created the world. Mm-hmm. Why would they create a flat world? If they created all these other planets and moons that are around, why wouldn't they just do the same thing here?
They didn't.
And then on the other side, and the other side of it, if you're talking about somebody who doesn't believe in a higher power, but they believe it was created by aliens or something, again, if you have the technology to create a flat Earth that floats in space with a big bubble over it, why wouldn't they just create or go to a planet and create it on the planet? So to me, it's just the whole idea of it just is confusing. It's like, why wouldn't, and again, I'm thinking, if I'm going to build it, if you're on spaceship Zippy 5 and somebody's telling you have a job and they're like, you have to build this thing, wouldn't you do it why would you make it complicated? Why wouldn't you just do it the way that's already out there?
Well, first of all, everybody knows that Zippy 6 was the superior planet building ship.
Ah, man. Yeah,
Zippy 6.
No, this saucer section got too big. They went out of control. Zippy 5 was the classic model.
So they mentioned this in this video because they one of the reasons they claim that people are so against flat Earth is because they're taking away all of our space stuff and all of our alien stuff by doing away with outer space. But that there are aliens, but they're not extraterrestrial. They are extraterrestrial, but
this is my favorite.
Extraterrestrial doesn't mean outside of Earth. It means extra land, and the outside of the ice wall, there's hundreds and maybe thousands of other continents and civilizations, and that's who's visiting us.
Right. I saw again, it popped up on my in the algorithm, but there was it almost looked like Atlantis, and they're like, this is our Earth, and it's surrounded by an Earth, or like this is our map, and it's surrounded by an ice wall. Mm-hmm. But outside of that, there's more water and more land, and that's surrounded by an ice wall. And then outside of that, there's more water and there's more land, and that's surrounded. So it's like multi-layered, like masses of water and continents. So it was fascinating.
Does every little atoll of worlds have its own sun and moon? Is that how that works?
Maybe that's how it works. I couldn't watch it
because
I honestly couldn't watch it.
You couldn't possibly have light outside of there.
I was going down the rabbit hole. Like it caught me, and I'm like, hey, it looks like Atlantis. And I stopped, and then they started talking about how the extraterrestrials were the elites. Mm-hmm. And there is this and again, like you're talking about weird, crazy conspiracy theories that are just crossing over left and right. And they're like, oh, well, these are people, everybody who has power, the whole world is controlled, and those people who are in power, they don't actually live here. They're in the next ice wall over, and they just show up and for whatever reason.
But if they've got their own,
when I stopped, I couldn't do it.
If they got their own little playpen over there, why would they care what we're doing over here?
I don't know.
That's a long way to go just to make some money, don't you think?
Well, I would think so, and with and on this section of the map, we have technology, and I don't know where they think the satellites are, but couldn't you just do that from your house and ice wall number 2?
Well,
and like
satellites are on balloons.
I didn't know that.
Well, that's what. Right. Now there are NASA and some other companies do use high level balloons for some things, because it's cheaper than sending up a satellite if you're not doing space related things, but you're not going to do like a telecommunications platform
right
on the thing, right? So they're like, oh, all satellites are on balloons now. That's what they believe. They're all on balloons. They were supposedly outside of a launch site. I don't know if it really was, but it seems strange that as they're talking, like this big like diesel truck pulls up out of the gate and like revs the engine, and like, oh look, they're not going to let us talk, and that guy leaves, and then they start talking again, and this other guy comes up and goes, oh, here's another truck, and then he happens to pull over and come over and start talking to him, and you're like, oh, we're just interested in the satelloons you're sending up. And the guy is like, oh, yeah, this, that, and the other thing. Like, yeah, it's crazy. Some people think they go up in rockets. And this guy's like, oh, I've never heard of such a crazy thing. And it's like, oh, so this guy's not a plant? Really?
Well, and again, here's my and again, this is not just this is everything. But let's just say somebody wanted to hide something, and you showed up with a camera and a microphone. Do you think you're going to talk them into telling you anything? And especially if there's some mega secret that's been going on for decades or hundreds of years or thousands of years or however long they think this is going on.
Yeah.
And they think they're just going to show up one day with like a GoPro and a bag of Funyuns and sitting in a car, and they're going to be able to crack the case.
Don't knock the Funyuns.
Well, no, Funyuns and a root beer. I'm sure that's a good cracking the case like snacks. But it's just with anything, like with anything. It's when has that tactic ever worked in the history of our civilization? Like, has that ever happened where you'd show up and you'd knock on somebody's doors and you're like, hey, I think this is it. Tell me the truth. And they like, oh, you got it. You cracked the code.
Well, the only time things like that happen is when it's people who actually work, who are tired of dealing with people like that showing up and like making all these claims. So they just play along and tell them whatever they want to hear. Because if that was me, like back when I did cable, if somebody had like some cable related conspiracy and I was pulling out of the cable plant and they're like, oh, we heard that cable's 5D energy that squeezed through a crystal and the thing, I'll pick, who told you? You want to see pictures? I definitely play along, because what else are you going to do if you're just sitting there watching like hot air test balloons launch all day? You're going to be like, this is boring. Oh, here's some nutters out here who think the Earth's flat. Let's go mess with them. See if we can get them to believe it.
Yeah, get on your walk and be like, hey, Bobby, there's some guys out here. Put on the costume.
Yeah.
Go run through the bushes.
Yeah, tell them they're right. Then they start dropping these hints Well, and you kind of hit on it there with the elites, all right? And
Did they come into that? Yeah,
yeah,
that's
they started tying it into this Project Bluebeam. Have you ever heard of this?
briefly, but I don't know enough about it.
Well, I had heard the term, but I had no idea what it was. So after I heard them talk about it, I'm like, well, let me go find out what it really was because this is probably wrong. So they say that the Project Bluebeam is basically a large scale, high definition, mass regional holographic projection technology. And what they're going to do so that they can create a one world order, one world government, new world order, is they're going to, in 2024 yet, so we've only got 13 months to find out if this is true, because in 13 months it'll be 2025, and well,
All right.
we should be all under the new regime by that point. They're going to project these alien spacecraft into the skies above Earth to fake an alien invasion, but the holograms will be disguising our own ships, our own aircraft, and we're going to bomb our own cities and blame the aliens so that the new one world government can step in and save the day.
Wow, that's a lot of work.
That is a lot of work because you're going to destroy a lot of stuff that you have to rebuild yourself.
So I guess my question is, you can't just have one, right? Unless this isn't tied to flat Earth, right? So
yeah, no, because there's no such thing as aliens because there's no outer space. They're not from upper space. The aliens that visit us are from outer worlds, outer space. That is outer space. But our government is going to use this hologram technology to, all the governments of our. Let's see, it gets confusing because they're saying there's other lands out there, but our government, our little playpen of government, all of them are going to get together to control all of us with a new world order.
So where do they mount these things? That would have to be an awful lot of what do we call them? Projectors?
Well, they'll probably just tape them to the bottom of B-52, I imagine.
Because there's unless they put them on the balloons.
Oh, they could use balloons.
Maybe they do that. They could do that on the balloons.
They could do that on balloons.
Maybe they'll get a balloon and they'll hang it from the balloon and shine it back up on the balloon. There you go.
I it's a little bit like the ghost from Brady Bunch on the sheet in the yard. Remember that?
I don't remember that, but it sounds like a Brady Bunch episode. No. So that's a lot of work. So then I guess we'll have to want everybody to come in and save us from the balloon aliens or whatever they are.
Yeah.
So that okay.
But no, they're not.
Yeah, I didn't really catch that.
Technology doesn't need to be projected on anything. It can just be.
It could just exist.
It just appears in the air because it's a hologram. Wow. You know how holograms work.
No, I don't.
You don't. They don't need to. They don't need some kind of medium. It doesn't need to be projected on anything.
Exist?
It can just exist in the air.
All right.
They're magic holograms. Just like on Star Trek.
That would make if this would if they said it was magic, I might believe it more. It's like, oh well, they found Merlin's staff, and they've been trying to figure out how to get it to work. So so we have about 12 months.
Yeah, less than
for this to happen.
Well, yeah, less than 13 months before we are fake invaded. Plan invasion. I'm gonna trademark that. Plan invasion. That's what they're gonna call it.
So I guess okay. So yeah, I have questions for these people, for these guys. So if there's multiple sections of the Earth with ice walls, but some could get over here and go back.
Yes.
Do they have the same technology as us, and why don't other people do it? I don't know. This was a hard one to believe.
Well,
The whole
so here is a very interesting question that you pose on that, because if there are other, well, I call them playpens. If there's other playpens out there, right? Some of them are going to play along well with each other, and some of them aren't, and some of them are going to be like, no, you shouldn't be hiding this truth from people. Don't you think they would show up, like, come over to our playpen and be like, look, this is technology we have. You guys are being subjugated. If you want to come with us, you can live in our playpen. We got plenty of room.
Yeah, I think something. If they're human and we're human, they would think like us, so that would happen.
Well, even if they're not human, if they're from the big flat existence of the plane of Earth, and you would think that they would. There's going to be some good ones and there's going to be some bad ones. So, A, where's that put us? And B, someone should have come to us by now. If there's this,
well, I'm just waiting on, like, somebody's going to have a disclosure kind of video where they're going to have, like, they're going to go to, like, ancestry.com for a genetics test, and all of a sudden they're going to have a little thing that goes outside of our map. And they're like, well, where does that go? What Halo Mexican group is that from? It's the Mexican guys.
Yeah, they're from another playpen. All right, so that makes sense. Yeah. Now I feel like I'm not being like really hard on these people, but I'm being dismissive.
I apologize.
I don't.
Yeah,
I don't.
I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings.
I don't mean anything. If you want to entertain the idea of flat Earth, that's fine. But this video does an extremely good job of making this particular group of people look very sane. But I recommend that anybody who goes and watches this level with me, get the names of the people that they're talking to, and then go watch their YouTube channels, because there's more than a few of them that are absolute assholes. Where if anyone, and it's not even like, it's one thing to have somebody disagree with you, or like I don't agree with flat Earth, and I think it's absolutely insane. And I don't mind chuckling about it, but I'm not going to get mad at somebody if they come to me and tell me the Earth is flat. If they tell me that they don't believe the Earth is a globe, I'm going to be like, well, okay, well, that's whatever for you. It has no bearing on me. But there's a few of these guys who, as soon as you say anything against their narrative, and it is a narrative, they turn into belligerent, swearing, slur-throwing morons. And I've seen interviews with them on podcasts and on YouTube channels where, as soon as they get even slightly challenged, they just try to make the audio so unusable. That
it's funny how people do that.
Yeah.
Like where you can't even. Yeah, that's a weird human tactic where, like, you'll get loud and aggressive, and you'll talk over somebody and you won't let them finish their thought, or as soon as somebody starts to talk, you change the subject. Be like, what about this? And how about that?
But it's not even that. I'm not even that's bad enough. I'm talking about, let's say I was one of these guys. The one guy is like a quotes spiritual leader, and he's got all. I've seen people disagree with him, and he will go straight to your effing lazy you don't, and he'll keep at it, and he'll just keep on throwing that one phrase every time you try to say something. He'll just say it, and he'll say it, and he'll say it, and he'll say it, and he'll say it. That is the mark of a small-minded, scared little child who's afraid to admit that they are trying to get you for money. So they all have some kind of like book that they're selling or something like that you're hurting their profits. They are con men. And you can tell simply by the way they choose to use their words. And a lot of times what they'll do is they'll find, there's this guy I saw on TikTok. So I've been messing around with TikTok with primitive intelligence. I've been putting up snippets, just as like a social experiment to see, to extend the reach of the show and all that. But of course now I get, because a lot of things I'm putting up because it's TikTok, that you can't put up a lot of serious stuff because it gets no traction. So I'm putting up the stuff like the aliens. So I'm getting all that kind of stuff back from, which is fine because I love those kinds of stories. But there's this guy, and I don't remember who he is. I'm not trying to not mention him. I just don't remember because things come up so quickly. But he's talking about how, and you can clearly tell he's flat Earth oriented. He's leaning that way.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how ether is the fifth element. So you got earth, water, air, fire, ether. Okay. Right? Did I miss one? Earth, one. Yeah. So, but it goes this whole thing. He's trying to get you to download a PDF because at the end of the videos, he's like, download my free PDF for more information. Well, that PDF is probably chock full of ransomware and malware and all kinds of crap. And he's trying to enrage people to go download his PDF because it's so full of shit that they're going to download it so they can pick it apart, and then they put it on their computer or their phone and they get malware or ransomware, or it starts mining crypto, and he's just looking for a way to make money, trying to get over on you. But he uses things like, he's talking about ether, and he says that ether is the only element that symbol is a circle, and uses my favorite. I told you about this. This is one of the things that got me thrown out of Sunday school when I was a kid. That the element, the symbol of a circle, it represents ether because a circle has no beginning and no end, right? And if you're watching a video, here's a circle. There's no beginning and no end, right? Well, this happened to me in Sunday school when I was a kid, and the Sunday school teacher was talking about God has no beginning and no end. Use his wedding ring as an example and held it up like this. And I took it and I turned it sideways. I said, yeah, but it's got edges. Because
it's all heathen.
It's basically, but it's all a matter of perspective. Yeah, its circle's got no beginning and no end until you look at it from a different point of view, and then it's got sides. So then he goes on to say that that's why the human skull is a circle. And it's another one of these things where they overlay something, but it doesn't match. Right. So it shows like a side view of the human skull. And it's like the human skull is a circle. Like, no, it's actually skull-shaped. It's not a circle.
Right.
And if you're trying to use that as the epitome of no beginning and no end, all you got to do is open the jaw, and there's a gap in the circle. Got a beginning and an end. So there goes your whole ether circle thing. Then he says that ether is in the word together because ether encompasses everything. And that the first Mexican hearing, that guy was talking about like the origin of a word, remember? And it was completely bogus.
Yeah, I remember that. But I remember the word was.
Because somebody said it. People are like, oh, that's the thing. Now, ether is coincidentally in the word together, but the word together isn't actually the word together. It wasn't originally spelled that way. The word together comes from Old Middle English and like ancient Germanic. It's like a combination word, like a combo word of to and gator, which meant to gather, to join in a group, to gather. And over time, as language evolves and people's dialects evolved, to gather became together. That's how the word came to be. It has nothing to do with the word ether. Nothing at all to do with the word ether.
I don't know, because there's so much information that I'm getting lost and in the weeds on crazy here or confusion. Maybe I shouldn't say crazy,
because that's the point, to keep you confused, so you don't look too deep. You hear something that sounds like it makes sense, you go, oh, that makes sense, and you just follow. It's a form of light hypnotism.
That makes sense. One of my observations I would point out, and I've been working since I was a child, and I've been in corporate America for like 30 years or more. I don't know how long it's been. And I would say that from just noticing people's behavior, there are characteristics of certain people who need to present themselves, and I don't want to use the word leader, but knowledgeable or something to that effect. And they will always come up with a question or something to point out or feedback. And now this is decades I've been seeing this go on. And what they will do is they'll find somebody, and it could be anybody, and they'll make a suggestion or they'll point something out, but they do it in a way that they appear like they're trying to help, but the person they're talking to, they always put them on the defensive. So they say, oh, well, what about this? I don't know. I don't like, however they say it. They don't come off as aggressive, even though it's a completely aggressive behavior. They present themselves as wanting to help, but the person on the other side can't say anything without being defensive and being on the defensive and trying to defend either something they've done or whatever they're doing. And it's a similar like human behavior, because then if you're on the opposite side, there you're having to defend something like, this is a pencil, and it's like, well, it's a pencil, but if you were to say something, then I sound like I'm trying to convince you it's a pencil.
Right.
So there's a weird human behaviorism that has evolved, where people can say certain things and then you look like the one who might not
be crazy,
know what they're talking about. And it's a similar thing where people want to, people come off like they know something or they're helping. It's right in your face. Go look for it. But if you say it's not right in my face, and then all of a sudden you're the one who looks like you're a non-believer, if you will,
right?
Something like that. You know what I'm saying?
Perfect example. I've heard this in multiple places, and you've probably heard this, and you out there listening have probably heard this if you've worked somewhere that's got any kind of corporate structure and you've worked there for any amount of time where changes have happened above you, where they come in and they say, we got to make this change because things aren't working. And when you keep on doing the same thing, it's the definition of crazy, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And then they'll say something like, this term was coined by Benjamin Franklin or Abraham Lincoln, Lee Iacocca, Einstein, something like that. And they'll say it, and they'll go ahead, look it up. It's in the dictionary. Now, I've heard this, the second time I heard it, I was like, first of all, like I'm sitting it was like in the cafeteria of this place I worked, and everybody's just sitting there kind of nodding like, oh, that makes sense. And in my head, like, since this is the second time I had heard it, because when you initially hear it, you kind of get taken aback, like, oh my God, no, that would be crazy. And I'm sitting there and I go, now, if I can draw on my experience of anything as a child, my mother used to go to the local library on Thursdays, every Thursday, and volunteer her evenings to work the library. So there was times where I would go to the library with her and I would spend hours on Thursday nights at the library. So reading books and listening to audio recordings of bird calls and looking at maps and just whatever, just walking around. And that's where I get most of my trivial knowledge that I know about dumb things I shouldn't know about. But the one thing they had in that library was this massive dictionary. It was, when it was open, it was probably 4 feet wide by about 2.5 feet tall. It was thousands of pages with like gilded edges and like the thumb like cutouts for like the different. I looked through that thing constantly, would look through it. And you know what was never in that print edition of a dictionary? The derivative of a word. It was always the root of the word. You wouldn't have the word insanity in the dictionary. You would have insane, but you would never have a definition for the word insanity. And the reason for that is ink was expensive. You didn't want to have a dictionary that was 1,000,000 pages, right? So you either had to have really small type or you had to have a lot of pages. So they didn't do derivatives. You would have insane. You'd have the definition from it. And then you'd have a couple examples. And then the other words that are derivatives of it that you would, by association, understand what they meant. Insanely, insanity, right? You wouldn't have insanity as a dictionary. So that's the first thing that popped in my head the second time I heard it. And then I thought, second of all, obviously these people have never lost anyone to mental illness, because that's an extremely offensive, outrageous thing to say. And I have in my life, and it immediately kind of pissed me off. So the end of the meeting, like I looked at a couple people in the meeting. I'm like, really? Nobody's seeing the bullshit that was just said? And everybody's like, oh, we got to listen to what they're saying. And they're like changing like our PTO or something like that, taking PTO away because it just wasn't working. So the department I worked in, we did a lot of stuff with spelling. And so we had like 3 different dictionaries sitting on a desk. So I walk back to my station, I go right to the table to dictionaries, and I start opening them up. And one lady comes over and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, just curious to see if insanity is in the dictionary. And she's like, what? I'm like, he said, look it up. I'm like, I'm just doing what the manager said. Go through the first one. Go, it's not in this one. Oh, he said Merriam-Webster's, right? Well, here's a Merriam-Webster's. Well, oh, it's not in this one. Oh, there's a second Merriam. Oh, guess what? It's not in the print dictionary. And she's like, and it like snapped her out of it for a second. She was like, oh, wait, what? I'm like, look, and I told her the same thing I just told you. You're never going to find a derivative in a dictionary. And I'm like, you know what though? You might find it online. You might find the word online because there's no pages. So I open up my phone. I go to merriam-websters.com. I find the word insanity. It gives a definition. And then below it, it says, if you're ever told that insanity, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result, that it's not a different definition. That wording would never show up in a dictionary. And it was never coined by any of these people that are, and they name all those people. And it actually goes through to say the first written recording of the phrase, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, came from 2 places: Alcoholics Anonymous and QAnon. No, not QAnon.
Wow.
What's the other one? It's Anon.
Oh, I know what you're talking about.
Right? So the
Anon,
2.
yeah.
So Anon and Alcoholics Anonymous. And I read that to her and I looked at her and said, now, where are our corporate people getting their information from? And she was like, oh my God. I'm like, I don't trust a word they say. But if you say it with enough authority and you challenge somebody to look it up, you throw them off. You get them off their game. They're now on the defensive and they're going to listen to what you say. It can be, and usually is, complete bullshit. And that's what these people with Flat Earth do. With all these conspiracies where they're trying to sell you something on top of it. By the way, check out shop.primitiveintelligence.com, pick up some t-shirts. But they're throwing something that has a little bit of truth to it, or it sounds like it could have a little bit of truth to it, but adding a completely different twist to skew it in a direction they want you to believe. Right. Like that's a definition. Or the other one this guy says is that we are an electrical body, right? And the universe is electric.
Okay.
Which I've heard before, right? The electric, like everything's electrical impulse. Flat Earth likes to use this as the reason for gravity because everything's charged in the polarities and all that. But he says that the reason why the proof of this is that when you get charged in a court of law.
Wow.
And then they put you in he says, battery cell in prison. And I stopped and I went, wrong. You don't get charged in court. You get charged by law enforcement. You get tried in court. So nice try, but your analogy is completely wrong. And it's never called a battery cell when you go to jail.
No, I've never heard of that before in my life.
But it's just close enough to making sense that people go, oh, I got to download this PDF and destroy my computer.
Well, and it's something where if people truly don't know something, they don't have experience, not in their world, not in their wheelhouse, and you start hearing it, you start thinking to yourself, okay, this is new knowledge, and you're putting it in your head as new knowledge. And that's where people will sometimes get confused, because if you hear, through repetition, you're going to think, oh, well, I've heard that before. That sounds about right. I've heard it somewhere.
Politicians are great at doing it too. Now, I politics to me is like religion. There's no good answer. And like the last election, the past few elections, there really hasn't been a good choice. But the one thing I always saw was, now, again, I don't really support either side, but was people who jumped all over Biden. Now, he's got his issues, obviously, with how he remembers or doesn't remember things. But they jumped all over him because he was at a UAW, United Auto Workers plant, and was confronted by someone who asked him a question, who didn't like the answer, and told him that, this is what you're going to do because you work for me. And then Biden turned around and said, I don't work for you. And they jumped all over him because, like, as the president, you do work for the American people. Bunch of things wrong. I saw people that I know reposting this online, and I'd never seen the clip. All I had seen was the posting, and I'm like, if he actually said that, I'm like, I want to see, because I don't know.
Yeah.
So I went and found the actual clip from the news, and it was about gun control, where this guy's telling Biden that he said he wants to take their guns, and Biden never said that. It was somebody, he was at a speech, and the guy that he was introducing said that there should be more stringent gun laws, but no one ever said they should take the guns. I don't want to get into the whole thing about that.
Right.
But the guy was very aggressive, and the people that were there, like the other union workers, the people from the plant and Biden's people, were trying to get him out of the situation because the guy was starting to get a little belligerent. So they're trying to walk him through the situation. And the guy gets right up to him, like right in his face, and he goes, you work for me. And to his credit, Biden started to say, I don't, and then he stopped. So he never actually said it, but they always dub it over. They always put the captions on that I don't work for you. And I stopped for a second, and I stopped the video. And I'm like, when was this? This is when he was running for president. So he was technically retired. So even if he would have said it, he wouldn't have been wrong. Because as a retired politician, he didn't work for that guy. He wasn't president yet. But he never actually said it.
Right.
But yeah, so it's taken completely out of context. And if it's shown enough, people believe it. Like,
and that
Luke, I am your father, or Scotty, beam me up. They were never said.
And that goes for, well, when it comes to politics, everybody, every party, every politician. Mm-hmm. It's used and reused, and it's a weird time we live in. And when I think about being young and the way media was, you might see some things here and there that were skewed, mm-hmm. but for the most part, I thought there were more presenters or shows that were more fair, and it was like, this is what's going on, and then they might have a commentary, or an opinion, you know what I mean? But today it just seems like you said, like today it's just like you take a little clip and you spin it and you replay it and you do it over and over and over, and in my opinion, and we've had this conversation offline, I think we've hit a point in humanity where we've got to a point where we've started to realize humans need stimulation, outside. And when I say stimulation, if you're thinking about being outside, you're listening to the wind, you're hearing birds, you're hearing animals, things like that. But getting bombarded over and over and over, your mind doesn't have time to analyze it or think about it.
No.
If like the way people, just think about I don't want to say 100 years ago, but 100 years ago when people used to write letters to each other.
Mm-hmm.
When I don't know who could write a letter today like that, but if you think about how long they must have sat to think about what they were going to say,
Oh, yeah.
and how they were going to say it, and always keeping in mind who they're talking to, how they were going to present it, and stuff like that. And today, you're like throwing information that like life-changing world event information in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then on to the next thing. And in my opinion, it's you know, as a people, we need to kind of keep ourselves on check and think to ourselves, do I really need to, you know, absorb all of this? Do I really need, like, what are you taking in? What are you thinking about? And how is it affecting you as a person? Because I'm sure some people can't handle it and some people can handle it.
Well, no, some people can't. And people get
Right.
paralyzed by it. Literally get paralyzed. Right. But that's almost the point, because the more stressed you make people and the more paralyzed you make them, the easier they are to control. So there's like this whole the level up or level with me video, the point of them saying it's all about new world order and control. Although I think they take the wrong path to get there, I think they're pretty close to the end game. You know, I don't. That's why I don't mind people taking like their own thoughts on things. But when you look at the way things are going right now, it really does seem like you are just bombarded with everything and anything to keep you occupied and preoccupied and not paying attention to what's really going on. Because it's just like we just had another almost government shutdown because of the budget. That just happened a few months ago.
Yeah.
If they can't get the budget under control, then they need to step down, because that is their job. And if we stop sending money to other countries, if we stop funding other people's wars, and we start putting money into our people, into our infrastructure,
jobs,
into our education,
factories.
Yes.
Right.
So if you're listening to this and you don't know, I run a company called Hemlock Mountain Outdoors. I make hammocks and outdoor gear. And for the last 7 years, I've been trying to find American manufacturing partners to work with. And I cannot get them to so much as return a call or answer an email. But I can go to China, I can go to Alibaba and go on, and they've got an entire network of manufacturers who will work with anybody. How do we not have something like that in the U.S.? How is that
it's
not
weird,
a thing?
right?
Because
it feels really weird that we don't have a spot you could go to. And I mean, even if it was like a government site and said, hey, here are
that's what
U.S.
Alibaba
made in USA.
Yeah.
And
look, I'm under no false pretenses here. I am very well aware that the Chinese Communist Party has their hands in Alibaba and every industry in China.
Well, but you would do 100% American if you could, right?
If they would work with American companies, but they only want the big contracts. If you don't walk in with $1 million falling out of your pocket, then they don't want to talk to you. It's like they never got a start. They never started their business. They were just handed the business, and they're making the money. They don't want to work. And then the first thing they do is they turn and go, "We're not making enough sales." The company I just worked for that shut down, they never sold direct to the customer. They had a website. In
today's age. Yeah,
think about today's day and age. They never sold direct to customer, and they wonder why they went out of business.
Yeah.
Well, there's why.
Well, and a lot of times, from my own perspective, you get in a corporate world, maybe not necessarily corporate, big company, a lot of people who get jobs who aren't doing the work that actually supports the real income. Like they're not actually doing they're not let's say client facing or customer facing,
Yeah.
or they're not producing something or sending something out. The people who, they work, but it's mostly meetings and, maybe they're doing some sort of project management and they're talking about ideas and how to do things. They don't always have focus. They're not close enough. And sometimes they're completely disconnected. And those people are really they're just getting a paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not really thinking about it. They're not really trying to make things better.
It's because they're not paid to. They're paid to justify their position. And that's a big problem we have in this country. And I've been seeing this for a long time. There's people who have positions. It's like they're like the Kardashians of the work world. They're famous just for being famous. These people have jobs just because they have jobs. They collect a paycheck just to validate the fact that they need to collect a paycheck. They're not doing anything.
Yeah.
They're literally not doing anything. And every idea they have is way off base. Like you said, they're disconnected from reality. And our government is the same way. You got people who have been in charge in the government for decades who don't remember what it's like to be an actual citizen. And when they were a citizen, you could afford shit. And you can't do that now because people are they don't care. They're making their money. They've got their power and they're happy. They don't give a shit about you. They don't give a shit about me. They don't care. They don't care if there's jobs. There's jobs out there. There's jobs listed. The companies aren't calling people back. And then what do? Nobody wants to work. It's because you're not calling anybody back. It's
or you'll go onto these
ridiculous.
These job sites, if you will, online, and you're looking for a job, right? Mm-hmm. And you put in, because we know people looking for jobs, and you go and you register and you're looking for this, and this, and you're not getting them. It's like, oh, I need to work from home. Here's a job to drive a truck.
Yeah.
Right. So you have
what's your education level?
Money.
Oh, here's a job where you need to be. You need to have 17 degrees.
Yeah, we're looking for a college graduate with 20 years experience.
I love that one. Right?
It's and it's just I don't know. And on the flip side of things, it's even on the other side where it's like, hey, we need somebody with a lot of experience, but we don't really want to pay them, and we're going to overwork them. So it's a weird time we live in. But I agree with you. I think, like, I don't want to say it needs change, but it's almost like we have to take it in our own hands. It's like if you want a different job, you got to figure out a way to go get it. Mm-hmm. If you want to create something, you got to figure a way to create it, Yeah. And I don't know how, I don't know how to manufacture quilt or not, well, I guess quilt material and hammock material, but it's like, well, how much would that cost to get a company going? Because it's
the
almost
crazy thing is too, is, this area, there was mills and factories. There's at least like 3 silk mills in the Scranton area at one point.
Well, at least
these massive buildings with looms. And they were making textiles.
Yeah.
There was a place right here, like a block and a half from my house when I first moved here. I remember I was doing cable in the building, and they had looms in there. They were making fabric. It's gone now. Like the whole building's gone. But like it's all gone now. And all we do is we either sit at a computer and do shit digitally, which doesn't even exist. Or we're supporting service, which we don't even really do anymore because that all gets farmed out.
Right.
And if you don't have jobs, how are you supposed to pay? And everything's a subscription now. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like it doesn't matter if it's a computer program. Oh, it's only $9.95 a month. I'm not doing any more subscriptions. I'm not doing it. I'm not paying you every month for a freaking program.
No one seems to. I don't know. I don't know if anyone's thinking about this company-wise, but it's like, okay, so we're gonna get technology, we're gonna get AI, we're gonna get some robots, we're gonna do some manufacturing, like we're gonna figure out how to do things with less people. But it's the people who buy your products.
Yes.
So like there was a time in the 30s and 40s and 50s where a factory went to a town and they supported their people because those are the people that bought the products.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's going to be, we're going to get to a point where it's going to be like, well, we don't need you to work anymore. And then you're like, well, I don't need your product anymore. Then they're going to cry and they'll be like, well, you can't, we're going to go out of business. You can't do that. We need help because nobody's buying.
Well, it's already happened.
What we're selling.
There's been 3 different companies in Pennsylvania that have gone under, or at least put up the notice to the state that they're laying off people in like 2 weeks. Because who can afford anything anymore?
Right. And like you mentioned, like the factories, and I don't know if this is true, but I remember, I think it was the Scranton Lace Factory, big building, and I believe they brought that loom or one of them from England. Like they threw it on a ship like 100 years ago and brought it over. And now today it's like, and now like where do we get anything? Like, you know, and and I really think, you know, we almost need a movement to go back to, I don't want to say bespoke or artisanal, because it's not, because those are like fancy words. Right. Those are fancy words to mark stuff up. But I really think we really need to go back to a place where we can support the community in the ways we can. Yeah. Like, you know, and I think we're going to have to. I think it's only a matter of time. Like,
yeah. I mean, I kind of wish the Earth was flat and that one of these other playpens would come in and straighten stuff out for us. They're fake aliens. That'd be nice.
Well, maybe you could, if you Google long enough, you could find a site for playpen number 2, and maybe they'll have some manufacturing.
Oh yeah, maybe they snuck onto the
and maybe there's a cave system that goes from our playpen to their playpen, and then you could hire like Bigfoot.
Well, yeah, that's under the Denver International Airport.
Well, see where it's all working out now. The playpen system. Our ripstop material is from playpen number 2, brought to you by Bigfoot.
Well, maybe that's where Bigfoot's from. That would explain a lot of stuff. Like if that was actually true, they figured out a way they got like little like turbo lifts. They can just go in and sucks them through like a bank.
That's what
canister.
That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just a little chair, but nothing sealed. And then when he goes through, the hair blows in the wind.
Oh, yeah, I like that. Yeah. Imagine if it's stuck on like there's like a crevice in the rock it's going through, and his hair gets stuck on his easy chair. That would be... You just hear screaming on the ground. Like, what is that? I was thinking more like Indiana Jones, where it would be like traveling through, and then at one point it has to like pop out of like one mountain and fly through the air like Evel Knievel, and then go into a cave in the other mountain, like and then land right on the tracks. Okay, yeah. I was thinking more like a bank tube, like real enclosed. He's kind of sitting a little open. It's got no doors on it. You're just kind of sitting there, like, don't stick your hands out to get ripped off.
He's sitting there on Fridays. He's got a little pinwheel because he's happy, and the pinwheel's spinning.
It melts right off, flies off. Oh, watch it fly away. Yeah, that started to get serious there real quick. So
yeah, I was getting
break out of that.
But yeah, so on my soapbox there and talk about things.
Yeah, the level with me video, not impressed with. It, like I said, it really made them out to seem more stable than they are on their own channels. When you watch these guys, they are all very much, they have an agenda. They've got a narrative. Look, think outside the box by all means, but at some point you got to step back and go, how crazy is this getting? I love a good story. I love looking at this stuff. I love it. It doesn't matter how crazy it is. I'll look into it just because it's fun. You let your mind kind of go, and it takes you other places. But when that place is an insane asylum, it's time to stop, I think.
Yeah, when you start going so far down the rabbit holes that other rabbit holes are like right on top of you.
Yeah.
It's like how much can you put on a plate?
I saw another video that was flat earth related, and the guy's like, "Can you tell me where this land came from?" And he's looking at the Piri Reis map. And I'm like, just listen to our episode. I'll explain it.
I have an answer.
I have the answer for you. Yeah. So, yeah, you never know where you get. The other thing I always find funny with this, too, is anytime anybody shows them any evidence, like shuttle footage or like International Space Station or pictures from satellites, they go, "Oh, those images are fake. They've been CGI. Here's our proof." And they show you images. It's like, what? How are yours not fake?
Yeah.
If these are fake, why aren't yours fake? Because a lot of theirs are. There's that one that showed the guy's like, "Oh, they're saying this is Mars, but it turns out it's a spot in Iceland." And it turns out somebody else is like, "No, that's not from Iceland. That's from Canada." And then this other guy goes, "No, it's not from Canada." And because I was looking at the picture going, "Man, that place looks familiar." And it's from the Barrens in Ireland, which I've been to. And it's like this big rock outcropping. And the guy's like, "No, this guy actually did this as a project, and he did it online to show how to do photo manipulation." And his idea was to take a picture of something and turn it into look like it came from Mars. There's an actual video of this guy making this photo as a fake, right? As a tutorial on how to do photo editing.
And it's being used as real.
It's being used as a real NASA photo.
Right.
And then someone did like this really crappy copy and paste of like the edge of a rover, because all the rover photos you can see the rover in them. Like, cause they use those wide angle cameras, but it's so crappy looking. This guy's like, "Look, this is proof." And it's one of these guys from that video from Level With Me. He's like, "No, this is proof. Look, I can show you this right here. This is a NASA photo." And the guy he's talking to goes, "Well, what's the number sequence on the photo?" He goes, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "All NASA photos are in a number sequence." "What's the number sequence on the photo?" So I can go to their database and pull it up. And he's like, "I don't have it." He goes, "And it's not a NASA photo."
Yeah, it was buried. They don't want you to know about it.
So this guy does his homework. He finds the photo that part of the the rover comes from. He found it. He matched it up. He figured out what photo it was from. He's like, "This is the real photo." They just copied and pasted it onto this photo. That isn't even a real photo. That was clearly being shown as a tutorial on how to do photo manipulation, and they're running with it as flat Earth proof that we've never been to Mars.
You just go down a rabbit hole upon a rabbit hole. So and I guess, like, on a positive note, I guess where I would end is there's a lot of things that you may never have seen in the world, and it's not crazy, and it's not like there's no mystery to it. It's just natural. It's the Earth. So here in PA, we have two places, I'll say. Hickory Run State Park. Mm-hmm. There's a boulder field. Mm-hmm. And if you look it up, I'm sure if you could cut some of the trees out, it looks weird. Yeah. But it's in the middle of a forest, if you will. The populated area. It's not, we're not talking in the middle of nowhere, but it looks unusual, perfectly natural. And then there's you might have to tell me what this place is. There are the Singing Rocks in Pennsylvania too.
Oh,
where
yeah.
If you hit these rocks, and different rocks will make different noises. And it's, again, perfectly natural. Now, I can't remember where the Singing Rocks are. I think they're in a state park or a state forest.
It's in
but again,
it's in a county park. It's called the Ringing Rocks.
Ringing Rocks.
Yeah, hold on. Well, it's the Ringing Rocks County Park. They must have changed the name.
Well, there you go.
See, yeah, it's in Bucks County, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So again, like to end on a positive note, maybe none of you have ever heard of something like that. And I'm sure there's a million things I've never heard of. Mm-hmm. But you don't necessarily have to overthink things. Sometimes what you see is really what it is. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'd say go out, explore, open your perception, but maybe, keep yourself a little founded in nature a little bit, and less online.
That's always good advice. And you do that after you listen to the podcast.
Well, yeah, they just got the advice. So now they can turn it off.
No, well,
until next week.
You're not getting this hour back from your life. And I think with that, we'll end our little fun experiment with flat Earth, and just look, believe what you want to believe.
Sorry if I offended anybody.
No, don't be. Everybody's offended. You're never going to apologize for it. Think outside the box. Look at different possibilities. Absolutely, come up with your own ideas, but you don't necessarily have to preach them to everyone and make them feel like idiots for not agreeing with you.
Right.
Other people can have different ideas. And look, I've never been to space, so any knowledge I have of the Earth being round is just off of what I've been taught and what I know. So for all I know, maybe you're right. I think you're wrong, but you might be right. And if you are right, I'll be the first one to come out and say, oh, shit, hey, I was wrong. I think more people need to start that. Just to, you want to be better as a person, you got to be able to sit there. The first 3 words you should say is, I was wrong. Because when you can admit that you were wrong, other things get a lot easier. So maybe you're right. I think you're wrong, though. But I definitely think that the people involved with that video are just trying to sell you something and keep you scared for some other reason. That's my personal opinion. Check it out. See what you think about it. Other than that, I've got nothing else. If you've got a comment about this, you can comment wherever you listen to us or watch this, or you can send us an email at podcast@primitiveintelligence.com. I am going to go get some food because I am starving all of a sudden. And I got to go to the store because I just realized I ate all my food.
Have fun out there in the snow. I say, long live the Bigfoot bullet train. And
do you know?
That's all I got.
I am now going to have to do research and see if anyone has a story about the Bigfoot bullet train. Because
you heard it here first.
If there's not a story, I'm gonna make one.
No.
Is that?
Or I want an image of Bigfoot in an Indiana Jones mine car. That'll work too.
With AI, I can do that for you.
All right.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. If you found it a little bit offensive, you're not going to like all of them. That's your problem, not mine. Have a good week. See ya.
See ya.